Good morrow to you all. You have fallen on bad times.
Brought to you by the Royal Holloway Shakespeare Society.
You join me, Theo Dudridge.
And me, Subhan Hay, as we bear some bardy truths. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Bard Times. This week I'm here with Ashton. Ashton, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everybody, I'm Ashton Kessler. I am the Publicity Officer for both Shakespeare Society and for A Sly Taming.
Amazing. Oh, so how has it been for you as a Publicity Officer so far this year?
I'm really enjoying it. I wasn't sure because I have other stuff going on and I wasn't sure, but honestly I think it might be my favorite of the committees I'm on just because I get to be creative. Everyone is really encouraging. I feel like I'm, getting to do things I want to do to make stuff with my limited skills, but I'm really enjoying it.
Amazing. So you joined Shakespeare Soc last year, not on committee, but as a member of it. And I think the first time I saw you was you delivering your academic discussion. Did you want to speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I saw in the because I take English and history, so in the English department email we got a thing, and it was oh, we're doing this academic discussion and it's about queer Shakespeare, and I was yes, I'm there. And so I ended up speed making a PowerPoint about Antonio and Bassanio in The Merchant of Venice, and how I felt that they were actually in love and that they're not just friends. And I came together with all these memes because that's my thing, and actual quotations to kind of prove my point. But to me, reading it, in the 2020, 21, it does come off differently, I think. But I get it. Lots of people just want to say, oh, they're friends. But I'm there's more here. It's not just you're my best friend. It's the devotion in it to me read as a queer thing, which is why I felt so strongly about it. But it brought me to Shakespeare Soc, so I can't complain. Everyone loved it, and then I ended up joining and auditioned for Measure, where I played a Mistress Overdone. So it's just been really great getting to that was my gateway.
Oh, what was working on Measure like? Because that was quite a unique thing, because obviously we're in lockdown, but we weren't in that much of a lockdown that we couldn't really meet up and make something. So we made a full-on film for that, which I'll plug right now. You guys can check it out on YouTube. What was it like working on that?
It was great in the sense, I think because obviously it was documentary style, it was easier for us, or at least I should say for me, because I didn't have anyone to share scenes with. That I was just with Theo and Meadow, and they were coaching me through it and everything, and we did it, and it was great. Versus now that we're doing A Sly Taming and everyone's together, it's a totally different experience. But I enjoyed it so much, and it was nice, having that freedom to record it over and over and over again, and then getting it right, and also saying, oh, this isn't quite working, let's tweak it, let's do this. Whereas when you're on the stage, you get one shot and that's it.
Yeah, that is a good point. With film, you can sort of keep trying, rehearse. If you get it wrong, you're can I try one more time? Whereas on the stage, you do obviously have one chance to get it, so that is quite different. On that, are you going to be looking to get involved in more productions as an actor, perhaps on stage this year, maybe next year?
I'd like to. I think it just depends. I think it just depends if it's the right thing that comes along. With this, you asked me to be Publicity Officer, and I was really excited to do that. So for me, I was it's fine. I'm not that fussed about being part of the cast, and I'm glad I'm getting to do this because, less rehearsing, less memorizing things, more just making stuff and being part of the creative process, which is what works for me at the moment, and I'm really enjoying that aspect. So maybe next term, maybe I'll be ready. But for now, I'm just enjoying this at the moment.
Yeah, you've done an amazing job so far. I'm biased, but I love the poster of A Sly Taming. But what was it like? So we worked on this together during the summer. What was it like, in your own words, preparing for this bid? Because you were a big part of preparing the bid, because we're all just sort of getting all the writing done, and we're sending over to you to like, hey Ashton, can you make it look all pretty and everything? And then there was the bid panel and all that sort of thing. Like, talk us through it. What was it like through that whole process of like trying to get this show even started?
I mean, I think like from the beginning we were so excited and we were having such a fun time, and like even though we were all stressed about it and trying to get everything perfect, like it just felt like it was this, like it was like our little creative baby, and we were so excited to like look at it grow and how it was changing and how all these things were happening. And then we went to the bid panel, and then we were like, oh my god, it's not exactly how we wanted it, like, oh no, like, but which happens, like, because we didn't know what we were doing, in the sense that, you know, none of us had gone to a bid panel before, and then we were like, here, slaughter our baby for us, like we worked so hard on it. But honestly, it was good, because like it gave us like, they gave us constructive criticism about what we needed to change, what we needed to work on and everything. But honestly, I think that like everything that we did was important, and it helped bring us to like where we are now, which was like being able to make it work. And I think that when I read, you know, the parts that you had written, I was like, oh, this is great. Like, I'm loving this. Like, I'm so proud of my little baby Subhan. He's so grown up. But like, you had a strong vision about what you wanted, but you were also willing to like let us come in and say, we think we should change this, we think we should do this. And like, considering that you have like an almost entirely female crew, and I think, and you were willing to like just let, like, you weren't like, well, this is mine and I've that's it. You were just like, no, I want to change things, what you guys think, like, which we appreciate. I mean, I speak on behalf of the rest of them, but
what would you say you're most excited for? Because, well, the actual performance is coming up. What are you most excited to see?
Oh man, I'm just excited to see like them all like perform like for real, like, because I've only seen like certain parts of it, obviously, because I've come to the rehearsals. So I'm really excited to see it all come together, because like I feel like our leads are so good, and I haven't gotten to see them like the real like chemistry between them, but like they both are just like precious, and I know I annoy Max by wanting him to be more of a douchebag. more sleazy, yeah. But I mean, like, to me, it's just great. It's so nice, like, getting to see them like do it, and they're putting so much energy into it, and they're all just, you know, I think it's great. Like, I love it, and I'm so excited just for all of it, just to see it come together. I'm like a proud mom.
Oh, it's gonna be amazing. Also, your just a little plug here, but your photography, your headshots and all that sort of thing have been very good and very helpful. So guys, if you ever want headshots, Ashton does really good headshots. Hit her up.
Well, we'll see when they come together tonight, like, 'cause I'm gonna do some more, although it's supposed to rain, but we'll see. But but we're gonna redo a few, just because people were like, I'm not sure, and I was like, maybe I should give this actual time.
You have a podcast of your own, Awakenings.
I do. Yes.
Yeah.
Basically, a friend and I started it because I got tired of seeing like all these like random white men on dating apps who are like, I have a podcast, and I was like, I can't imagine you have anything fun or better to say than I do. So basically, Elsie and I just created it together. I think we've just recorded like our 6th or 7th episode. We are just loving it. It's just the best. Like, we actually did a 10 Things I Hate About You episode.
It's one of my favorites.
I'm so glad. Like, we had so much fun. It's just like, because like she is a Victorian, she has a PhD in Victorian literature. And so, yeah, so for both of us, you know, being, you know, nerds, we get to talk about films and like the things that we love, and like what really like shaped our personalities. And that's the reason why we called Awakenings. It's like, it's not just like a sexual awakening, it's just like awakenings in general. Like, what about this film like was so important to me? Like, the first episode we did, which was The Mighty Ducks, which she's a huge hockey fan. She has a tattoo of Gritty, which is the greatest thing I've ever seen. And that was just incredibly like important, and like it's an important moment for her. But I have lots of those films, and I feel like it's great having guests on and being like, hey, what was the most formative film for you? What really like shaped your personality? What made you become the person you are? And I love that we get to talk about that for like an hour, about like this movie that we both love, or, you know, the intricacies of 10 Things I Hate About You, and how much like Heath Ledger could do these things, but if a normal man did it to me, I'd be like, go away.
I really love that concept of an awakening, because it it conceptualizes how I feel about films. And it's like, obviously not every film does this, but like the proper good films do awaken something in you.
Yeah.
And it's a good word, awakening. Like that's what it brings out in you.
Yeah.
So
we'll have to have you on. You'll have to pick out a movie and come on and we can
I'd love
that.
to come on. I defo one of the films I've recommended for you.
Yes.
If we do an episode on, I'd love to do that. But what's it called? I was saying, if you'd like to reiterate what 10 Things I Hate About You, what was the awakening for that film?
I mean, it was like, I think one of the first Shakespeare adaptations I'd ever seen. I know there was like a time in the 90s when they like started doing those. And I think for me, I'd never seen like, I'd never seen it that way. Like usually you always see like adaptations of Shakespeare. It's like everyone's wearing, traditional garb and doing those kind of things. I think aside from Romeo and Juliet, it was like these two ones were like the ones that were based on Shakespeare, had Shakespeare in their DNA, and it was incredibly important. And I think with that, it just opened my mind a bit to like, you can be, a bit of like a shrew, if you will, but there's still someone out there who will match you in wits and things like that. I mean, even if like I didn't necessarily understand Kat as a kid, but I loved that like Patrick was so interested in her, and like, he didn't care that, she was a bit, of a dick sometimes, I just thought that was like lovely, because when you're a kid, you're like, I'm 10 and like that's all I can think about is like, oh, what if someone loved me like that? Wouldn't that be nice? But like, I mean, because like that's what you think as a kid, and that's how old I was when I probably saw it. But I think I was focused more on like the love part of it, whereas now as an adult, I'm like, I really appreciate that Kat's like so independent and so like secure in her personality and what she wants, and like I really envy that. Like I can't imagine being 17 and knowing what I want so clearly, because I didn't. So I do think it changes as you get older, like films that you love or even Shakespeare plays that you love. Like it changes with you as you get older and you get more things out of it.
That's interesting. Because we had a film night of this film. We watched it together recently. I don't think you were there.
No.
No.
I
just thought it would be interesting to share, because the general room had a lot of opinions about the film. One of which, the most prominent one being Bianca's prom dress. No one liked it.
It is Pretty in Pink level horrible. Like, if you've ever seen Pretty in Pink, she takes two lovely dresses, combines them, horrible. Like, it's iconic. If ever you mention to someone, you're like, oh, have you seen Pretty in Pink? They're like, yeah, I've seen it. I've seen that ugly dress. Like, it's just,
oh God,
it's so important. And yeah, and I think that's the thing. Like, even I, having grown up at that time, and like, I had older sisters, so, we talked about prom and things like that. Nobody wore that. Like, it doesn't fit her. It doesn't fit her.
I'm just surprised that this is a thing that people focus on. Like, I was watching it and the whole room just erupted. Like, that looks horrible. I'm like, I don't know. It was quite a random thing for me.
I know, I know it is. I think it's one of those things because it's like a lot of times in a film you get, like the makeover, and like Kat's not ugly. We just see her for the first time and like she's wearing her mom's pearls, which is a thing I never noticed until then.
Bianca or Kat?
Kat is like, so Bianca had been wearing them like the whole film, and then all of a sudden Kat's wearing them for the prom, and I thought, oh, that's really sweet. They must have gotten ready together, and like that's like a sweet.
Yeah, I genuinely think 10 Things I Hate About You is the only adaptation I'm aware of that touches on where was their mum.
Yeah.
Even A Sly Taming doesn't do that, admittedly, because we're like, what do we do with that? So it is a bit difficult, but it's a good, because they had this argument like, yeah, mum's not here anymore, I can wear the pearls, and like that sort of thing, which was quite interesting.
Yeah.
Another thing that people really picked on during the viewing of the film was that, basically the ending. So like, how Patrick makes up with Kate by basically buying her a guitar, and everyone was like, "You can't buy love." And
I love that they think that. Someone bought me a guitar, I'd be like, "All right, yeah, whatever."
Oh god.
But I guess
Like,
it's happened when you hit your 30s. You're like, if you want to buy me something, I'm game. Whatever you want to buy me, I'll take it.
It's like it's complex because like he uses the money that he. So they had this fight at the end because, well, spoilers it, but you guys should have seen it.
It's
by
been
now.
out since 1999. Get it together, guys. Most of you probably were not even born yet.
But so the fight they had was because Kat finds out that Patrick was basically doing it for money, and then they have a falling out, and then they make up because he uses the money that he got from whatever was going on to buy her a guitar. And it's just a bit like, I don't know, how do you feel about that now as opposed to how you must have felt about it before?
I think like I didn't really think about the like implications of it when I was a kid, but as an adult I see it as that like he does like her for who she is and he stops taking the money. It's just that Joey won't leave him alone, so he gives him the money, and then he just takes the money and uses it to buy her something that she really wants.
Yeah.
He doesn't use it on himself. He doesn't like do anything else with it. Instead, he's like, he like basically sacrifices the money, which like I mean, because we don't really like we've seen the house she lives in. She has a nice life. We have nothing. We don't really know a lot about Patrick. It seems like he doesn't have like the greatest of upbringings, at least from what we can tell. But like instead of taking that money, which I'm sure he probably could have used, he buys her something. And I think because of the way that they had like argued about it and stuff, and he was like, you know, I do love you and I do care about you, and that didn't matter anything to me. Like that hasn't been an issue for quite a while. I've been getting to know you and falling in love with you, and I'm sorry I didn't tell you. But, you know, they are both two complicated people, and like even if that was his introduction into getting to know her, like it stopped being an issue a while back. So I think it really is up to her and what she wants to do. But I think the fact that he's willing to like take that money and give it to her and buy her something that she's obviously wanted for so long, and like to like I guess basically like facilitate her dreams, because that's what she wants to do. Like she'd love to play guitar and be in a female rock band and stuff like that. And something about it is just, I think it doesn't seem like there's any strings attached to it. It's simply this money is yours. I'm going to use it for something I know you want, and I'm leaving it there for you. And I mean, to be honest, they'll probably have another fight, and they'll probably go off to college and argue all the time, and, you know, maybe they won't make it through. But, like, something about it, I think, as an adult, like, I'm just like, I appreciate that he's willing to admit that he's wrong and that he fucked up and that, this wasn't great. But also at the same time, he's like, I'm basically laying myself out here saying, I know I've messed up. I know I've been a dick, but I love you, and that's what's most important. Everything else doesn't matter. And I don't know. I guess it's an adult who's been through who's been through a few relationships. I have a lot of respect for that, for someone to be able to admit that they're wrong about something.
Yeah, it's important. I just, in my last viewing, I was thinking about how, so Kat gets this scholarship to some place, and her dad makes a big deal about how it's like on the other side of the country. Yeah. And I'm just like, ooh, I don't know if Patrick moves there with her or... Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. It's just... Yeah.
Well, it's one of those things that's like, because you're at that age, like, there's no telling. But at the same time, like, we have no... Like, we don't really get to know, like, other than he has all these, like, rumors about him, and he took time off to, like... But it seems like he took time off to care for his granddad. And that's why he was, like, held back a year. So it's not... So it sounds like he probably doesn't come from, like, you know...
A well-off, yeah.
Yeah, a super well-off family. And also that, like, you know, he's from Australia. So, like, he may have different, like, you know... But, I mean, yeah, Sarah Lawrence is on the East Coast. So, yeah, it's a big thing. But, I mean, who knows? I mean... But I think that's the thing with all, like... young adult like media, is you have that like thing at the end where it's like, well, I'm going away to college, I'm going here, what are you gonna do? Because long distance is hard. I've been through it sucks. But you know, when you're young you think this is gonna work, and like who knows, like maybe they will, maybe they'll make it work, maybe he'll go to a uni that's close to her but that he wants to go to, or who knows. We don't really like we get to know Kat really well, and we get to know Bianca really well, but we don't really get to know the boys very well, which is fine.
Yeah, that is true.
Like it's definitely makes a change we don't really see like that much of his interior life aside from like liking Cat, but I know shit tons about Cat.
So you're studying English and history here at Royal Holloway. What has
Yes.
that been like so far?
I'm really enjoying it. Like, I waited a long time to go back to uni. I hit 30 and was like, if I don't do it now, I'm never gonna do it. So yeah, I'm really glad I waited, because like now I feel more equipped to do it. But I've really enjoyed it. Like, and you know, I think we have really great teachers. The English department is obviously very highly rated. They're really lovely. You know, it's really gotten me into like, oh my gosh, like I've always loved learning, but I forget how much I enjoy it until I'm doing it, and it's been great. Like I'm getting to like pick what I want to do and like what I want to study, and like obviously, as we've discussed, the romantics is like something I'm taking this term, which I'm obsessed with. And it's been really lovely, and everyone's been really wonderful. Like, even though I'm a decade older than they are like, they've been really sweet. Like, I appreciate you guys don't like, oh, you're like everyone's mom, which I am.
No.
I'm happy to be everyone's mom,
it's
but
weird
within
because
reason.
we already have this like sort of mom-dad system in like this uni. Like, the person who introduces you to the society is like your society mom or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I agree. It is a very open. I don't know if all universities are like this, but Royal Holloway has been a very open, very welcoming space, but also understanding space. So how's the history side of your degree been? Because I know that's obviously another top department in this country.
Yeah, like this year I'm taking 2 Victorian classes. Don't know how that happened, but I'm happy to do that, because Victorian era England is very different than America. So for me, it's just been interesting getting to like understand like the intricacies of that. Obviously, I have a friend who has a PhD in Victorian literature, so it's like, it's nice. We have something to talk about this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, oh, but did you know? Blah blah blah. Sorry.
No worries.
But yeah, like I think it has been really interesting. Last year I took one that was like focused on modern history, which was like from like the Enlightenment on. And I found that really like interesting. I got to focus on like in my final project I focused on how, like, you know, we need to have more modern attitudes towards like history in some ways, which is like queer history especially, where it's like we always, like, a lot of people, and by a lot I mean straight people, view it as like, oh, this is such a new thing, like being gay, and I'm like, it's always been there. This is not a new thing. It's always existed. Gender and sexuality have existed since the beginning of time. That's never changed. And I actually got some help from a previous host of this very podcast for that, which I appreciate.
Cassie. Oh yeah.
Yes, yeah. She gave me some she was like, oh, maybe you should look up these people and do this, and I was like, great. And then like it totally like opened my mind and like didn't even realize. So it was great. Like, so it like, I love that, like, they let me do that. They weren't like, oh, gross, like, you know, they just were like, no, like, they're very welcoming of that kind of stuff, and that's something I tend to focus on because it's what I'm interested in. But I appreciate that I don't have to like go like this narrow-minded view of like, well, this is the only way we could do it. So it's just been good in that aspect, that like I get to focus on that kind of stuff.
I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, it's good. Like, it does keep up with this narrative that I have going on, that it is open, and it's open in ways that even I haven't, like you just said, like in the way that I found it was open. That it was open for me to bring my ideas and all that sort of thing, which in A-level used to get shut down. It's like, no, not part of the syllabus. University is more of a place where it's like there isn't that much of a syllabus. It's like, we need your ideas. So I like that. It's very welcoming and it's very open. So looking at the romantics, what has that been like for you?
Like, you've got like these players, you know, like you've got Byron and you've got Shelley, and like the two of them are like as thick as thieves, best friends, but like obviously Byron is far more like just pure chaos in the nicest way possible. But I enjoy that. Like he wrote lots of beautiful poetry, but also had a mess of a life.
Yeah.
Personally, which like and that's the thing, like when you write all this beautiful poetry about people, obviously it's gonna get messy. And so like I don't know, it's just but then you have like Mary Shelley, who is metal, just like, you know, wrote Frankenstein, like something that, you know, none of these boys could ever imagine writing, because it's, you know, a meditation on like life and like loss and what it's like to like like to give birth to something, whether it's like in the story it's, you know, a creature that you've created, or in her case it was like she had a child and the baby died, like that sort of thing. So it's like something that's like taking that like pain and grief and putting it into something. But also like she loved, you know, her husband Percy Shelley, and you know they had a very interesting relationship. She was a bit younger and he is like kind of married to someone else, and like again,
Yeah, was Percy the one that sort of like cheated on his wife?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. Oh god, I remember.
I love a drama. I can't help it. I love a drama. Like, and with this, like, I know they're real people, but like it influences the way they write about things. And like fun story time with me, Byron had an affair with this lady who was also a writer. Her name is Lady Caroline Lamb, and she basically, like, you know, they had this like affair for a while, and then he broke it off, and then she was like so upset about it that she ended up making a giant scene like in front of all of, like, because she was married, she made a giant scene in front of like all the people, because like he was like with someone else, and she like freaked out and was like, oh my god, like, and her husband basically was like, you can't do this, like you cannot make a big deal about this, like I get it hurts, I get you're sad, all of those things, but you can't do that in front of our friends because it makes us all look bad. You know, so it's like you had leeway in the sense that, like, you know, it's not to say that people didn't love each other, but monogamy was different, you know, in a lot of ways. Or some people were monogamous and it was fine, or they weren't. But I think the thing with the romantics is a lot of times they challenge the idea of that. Like Mary Shelley's parents, Mary Wollstonecraft, like she was like the proto-feminist. She didn't marry her husband, like they just had children and lived together, and that was scandalous, you know, like, yeah. But she was like, she didn't want to lose her autonomy or her, you know, herself in getting married. And I think that's amazing. Like, it's still things that we deal with today, which is like, oh, like if I marry someone or if I change my name, what does that say about me? Does that make me a bad feminist? Like things like that. So I get it, and I think it's a thing that's interesting. I think it still has ties to today.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and that's quite the deep view of that study of the romantics. It's like questioning yourself, and it is quite surprising how stuff like romantics and Shakespeare are related today. Like I kind of get this feeling that in terms of ideas they were so advanced and we've sort of regressed. Do you feel that as well?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Well, I think like, yeah,
it's like we're looking at them again and going, we want that. I don't know, it's weird.
I mean, I think it's like you do have like the Victorian era, which did like kind of like I don't know, it's weird. It's like, I think as things have gone on, they have changed. And like, yeah, I think in the Victorian era is when like people would get married and it was like, oh, you're supposed to be a virgin before you get married. Like, I don't think it was that much of a big deal beforehand. I don't quote me on that. But a lot of times it was like people would just be common law married. It was like, excuse me, you just start shacking up with somebody. And then you'd have kids together, and that was it. And that was your life, you know, and that was fine. And then, you know, people that were, you know, of a certain breed, yes, they would have marriages, they would get married. But if you were just like poor, it was like, who cares? Like, who's gonna stop you? But I think as we've gotten older, as like the kind of class thing have trickled down and it's less of a thing, I think people have like taken that and been like, oh, well, I can't do this because, you know, I want to seem like I'm, you know, higher status or whatever. I don't know. Especially in America, where it's like I mean, at least where I'm from, it's still kind of like looked down upon if it's like you live in sin, which is silly, because I'm just like, this is silly. Like, you know, who cares? Like, what does it matter? Like, if you want to get married, do it, but don't be worried about like, oh, you know, we live together and like that's so shameful. Like, I don't see it in the same way.
Amazing. So we were discussing earlier about how the Romantics, because everyone were influenced by Shakespeare. Like, do you think they were influenced by Shakespeare, and how much so?
I mean, yeah, I would say so. I think everyone is, in the sense that like Shakespeare gave us so much, like, you know, the tropes of certain things, like the you know, the writing, a lot of dick jokes, let's be real, like things like that. It's like, and I feel like people took it and have made it into their own, like especially like a lot of iterations of like different Shakespeare plays you can find, or the same themes, like those sort of things. It's something that's lasted for so long, and I think it's lasted like, and I think the Romantics also took some of that on in the way that like they wrote poetry and like sonnets and things like that. Like, I feel like it just kind of like made its way through, I think, like, and just like it does until now, like. But I think at the time you probably didn't have the same kind of like recognition that it was like, oh, I've picked up like these things from, you know, I read King Lear and now I'm writing the story about a dad and 3 daughters, and like you don't really think about it in the same way, whereas now you're like, I know exactly where that's come from, and like I can figure it out, like I can do this research and find out like if I'm trying to make it different or whatever.
The weird thing about the Romantics is like they had really good ideas that still resonate with us today, but it's like sometimes you could say they went too far. Like, I remember reading about how, I think when, I don't know who died, I think it was Byron. One of them died and they like literally took his heart or something.
I think that's Percy
Shelley. Right.
Yeah, I think.
So like, what was the idea behind that?
I mean, if I remember correctly, I think it was Mary Shelley kept his heart because she was his wife, and I think it was. Oh, okay. It's kind of like a weird goth thing. Like, she was like the proto-goth. Like, her mother was the proto-feminist. She was the proto-goth girl. And I assume, you know, not that I was ever really cool in goth, but I would imagine that it was probably, you know, a sense of like, this is the one thing I can keep of him, his heart. You know, like, it's, you know, if you think about it in the sense that like
they literally did what they talked about, like keeping his heart and that sort of thing. Yeah,
and that's great. Like, that's another thing we would do, like, oh, that's desecrating a corpse and stuff like that, whereas I'm just like, that sounds really cool, like, good for you.
Yeah. Oh god.
I mean, I don't know, maybe that'll be my next date idea. I'll be like, let's go to Percy Shelley's grave, and then we can, like, you know, talk about hearts.
It's an interesting idea. And the last thing I wanted to ask you is what it was like studying Shakespeare in high school in America. What was it like there?
I mean, it's very different. I think, as with anything, at least here, you have access, or at least at uni, we have access to all of this, like, all of these productions and being able to see it so easily. Whereas in America, it's a bit more difficult, like, because if you don't live near a big city, you just don't really get to go to the theater or anything. And, like, I've seen, like, a few, I think, when I was in school, and it always made a difference, or you could actually understand, like, because it is a play. You need to see it performed. You want to see it. You want to see, like, the choices the actors are making, but also having someone read it out to you, you understand the jokes a bit easier. It comes easier being able to see it and understand it. Like, whereas if you're just, you know, reading it as a 16-year-old, you're like, oh, this is boring, like, I don't want to read this, like, oh, like, so I think you guys do have an edge in the sense that, like, it's just right there at your fingertips. Like, it's so much easier to be able to view productions of, you know, Shakespeare, or being able to, like, go and see it. I mean, I've been to Stratford upon Avon, and, like, it's lovely, and it's just really cool to see. But, you know, as a kid, I would never have been able to do that. Whereas here, it's like, people just do it, and they're like, yeah, that's the thing I've done. You know, as a kid, we did it in school or whatever. And I do think it makes a difference, like, having that there, or being able to go to the Globe and see it, and those kind of things. Like, I think it gives you a more encompassed view of Shakespeare, whereas like I was just, you know, a suburban kid watching a bunch of Americans perform Shakespeare. And as fun as it is, and it is very fun, it's not the same.
Yeah, I think like personally, from having worked on an actual production of Taming of the Shrew, I feel like this is the best way I've learned Shakespeare. If that makes sense. Like if you were to give me an exam on Taming of the Shrew, I'm sure I would do well, because we've literally been involved in sort of like creating it. And I feel like a lot of schools need to sort of be like, okay, we're gonna have an exam on Macbeth. Let's put an adaptation of Macbeth on, because that just gets you more involved, rather than, like, as you were saying, just reading it and just, it's gonna be boring if you just do that. Yeah. Well, it's been a very good time talking to you, Ashton. Thank you very much for your time. And
thank you for having me. I appreciate it. You too. All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for listening to this week's episode of Bard Times. I've been Subhan Hay, and in the words of the bard, beauty lives with kindness.